Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside Hollywood with Koch. I'm Jen Clymer, and this is Creative Chaos. I'm so excited for today's show. Let me hand it over to Freda and Hawk right now.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I just want to give this great statistic that came up yesterday. We have now had 6,995 views on Inside Hollywood and Behind the Book. So thank you for being one of those viewers. We hope that you tune in often, and very excited to have our guest today who has brought us so many wonderful things to watch and is a true inspiration. His career continues, which you will learn about, and I can't wait for this interview to begin. So I'm going to hand it over to Hawk now, and thank you so much, Larry, for joining us.
Thanks, Jen, and thanks, Freda, and welcome everybody. We need 5 more people to watch. We'll get to 7,000. Today, I really do have the pleasure of interviewing Larry Turman. If you want to know how the movie business is run and what a producer does, there's no better book than Larry's So You Want to Be a Producer. I've read it several times trying to learn how to be a producer. This book not only gives you the inside scoop on how to produce movies and television, but also has great stories of Larry's career, and what a career. He produced one of the greatest films of all time. I think it's in the AFI top 10. I even think it's in Billy Ray's top 10, The Graduate. He gave me my first associate producer credit when I was an AD on his film, The Drowning Pool. Therefore, I've known Larry for, oh my God, 47 years. Wow. For the last 25 years, as well as producing, he has run the Peter Stark producing program at USC. It is the best graduate producing program in the world. And nobody will ever say that it isn't. Just a week ago, Larry moved in to the motion picture home. So unfortunately, he hasn't gotten a chance to see all the other members of the home because of COVID. I know he will soon, and I can't wait to get back out there and have lunch with Larry, or as Larry said, maybe we'll go out to lunch away from the home. But so anyway, welcome, Larry Turman. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. At least I think I'm doing well. No one's told me otherwise, and I'm happy to be here at this august, stellar place.
Yeah, how have you, I mean, you came from, you had a beautiful place in Century City, and now you're at the home. How does it feel to be here? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it feels very good. It feels secure. The best example is I'm only here a month so far. I've gotten my 2 COVID shots. That's worth, I don't know, how many hours of therapy is that worth? So I'm very happy here. I mean, it's reputation is well known and well earned. So I feel fortunate to be here. It's not the easiest adjustment I've ever had in my life. It's different, but I feel relaxed and secure, and that's awfully nice.
Can you tell us why you decided to come?
Well, then I'm going to make a big announcement here. I'm 94 years old. And
oh.
It doesn't seem smart to be living by myself. I mean, I'm a devoted reader of the New York Times and daily, including the obits. You cannot believe the number of people who die from a fall once they're up there at this advanced age. And I didn't want a live-in companion because I'm walking and talking and I'm functioning fine. Indeed, I'm still teaching my final class at the USC START program. So frankly, I didn't have wonderful alternatives. So
Well,
here I am. I tried to reach Brigitte Bardot in France, but I don't even know her to be to be a companion. So here I am.
well, I can tell you that, I guess about 15 years ago, my mother was close to 90, and she was living alone in the Wilshire corridor, and she was very lonely by herself. And I brought her out to the home just to see if she'd like to move in. And we had lunch downstairs where you are in the villa. And all of a sudden she went, "Oh, hi, Shirley. Oh, hi, Jerry." She all of a sudden knew everybody at the home. And she said, hey, she asked me if she could live there because she had a real social life. And I know that a real return to a community. And I know, Larry, once we are able to open up, I think you'll feel the same way. So I'm very excited for you.
Yeah, well, I already have a couple of old pals here. I mean, the day I arrived on down the hall from me was Mark Rydell, the famed and talented director.
Right.
And I met Mark the first day of my first job in Hollywood. I answered a blind ad. I was an agent trainee. He was an actor, and he came in, and I'm talking, God knows, a jillion years ago. So he's one. There's, I have some pals and some acquaintances here, and obviously more to come. And of course, we have the commonality of showbiz.
Exactly. So let's start at the beginning, Larry. I know you grew up in LA.
Yes.
Where in LA? Where in LA? Where in LA did you grow up?
Mid Wilshire. I was Detroit Street and went to all those public schools that were so superior. I felt I got a better education in public schools in LA in the Gulf 30s and 40s than my sons did at the august private schools around the city.
Right. Did you go to Fairfax or LA High?
I went to LA High. Story. I was in the Fairfax district, but petitioned the mark of a producer. I was aggressive. Petitioned to go to LA High because my pals were going there, and I got in. So yeah, 3 years at LA High.
So now, as a kid growing up, did you go to movies? Did you go to the Carthay Circle? Or?
Not Carthay Circle. I went to the Ritz Theater, La Brea, Wilshire at La Brea, and every Saturday, double feature. And even then, I think my mother or father had to come down to pull me out because I was probably watching every movie the second time through, sitting there.
Can you remember what your favorite movies were at that time?
I cannot, oddly enough. I don't remember. I liked most of them. And also I liked getting those candy bars before going in, Butterfingers and Baby Ruths and Hershey's. I loved all that. Right. But also in those days, they also had cereals, whether it was Tarzan or Charlie Chan or whomever. So it was a very different world in every way, not just movies, obviously. But yeah,
I don't know if they were running when you were growing up, but I remember though I can't remember the guy's name, the shorts. Uh-oh, here comes Knucklehead. You remember that guy?
I don't know that, but I do have this memory, which I will now tell you, that I had the memory of seeing a silent Tarzan movie.
Wow.
Yeah, wow, indeed. A silent movie must have been early 30s. And I was born 26, so I was very young, but I did see a silent Tarzan movie.
Right.
Not a movie, serial.
Right.
They had the Tarzan before the movie, and always the cliffhanger,
For next time, right.
The serials were bring them back. So, the hero in great danger, and you come back the next week and somehow he got out of that danger.
Now, your dad was in the fabric business. Were you thinking, oh, I'm going to go in the fabric business? Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, think you'd be in the movie business?
Say that again. I have hearing aids and one just went dead. What do they say? What can go wrong will go wrong, and at the worst possible time. So let me grab and put one in 1 second if I can find one. Gee,
okay.
what a bummer.
What I love about live TV, Hawk, that you never know what's going to happen.
Just want everybody to know, look how spry Larry is at 94. I mean, he's running around like he's...
I can't wait.
What a bummer. I don't even know where I have a hearing aid. It's okay. Fire.
That's okay.
Larry, we were just saying how impressive and spry you are. That you popped right up and ran across the room is really amazing.
Amazing, yeah. That in a quarter you can make a phone call, but yeah. No, I'm lucky and I recognize it. Mind you, I do the stuff you're supposed to do. I do my exercises, everyday stuff like that, but mostly it's in the genes, I think.
Right. So Larry, your dad was in the fabric business.
He was in the fabric business like lots of uneducated people of that generation. Yeah, he sold fabrics, as I did for a couple of years. Unlike the students I have in my program at USC, the Peter Stark producing program, who are so organized and planned in their careers, I was from middle class, had a college education. I made no plans for a future. Today, the students I have and see, by the 10th, 11th grade, they're already totally organized towards college and career. I went to UCLA because I had been in the Navy for 2 years, World War II, prior to going to college. Took a liberal arts education, UCLA. I think I got a good education, but I got out with no plans. The kids I deal with in my program at SC, Peter Stark Producing Program, they're planned and organized from the 10th grade on, and they cover every base. Even if they're angry, hateful people, they make sure they spend one summer at Habitat for Humanity or something. They make sure the resume hits every single base. Probably appropriate, probably necessary, but so different than the life I led growing up.
Right. Well, your book brilliantly, and I mean brilliantly, intertwines your life story with every facet of producing and what it takes to be a producer. And you mention luck, taste, preparation, and tenacity. Those are the biggest takeaways. You pepper your book with great quotes from successful producers.
Yeah.
My favorites are hard work guarantees you nothing, but without it, you don't stand a chance.
That's
so
right.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about, we'll take them one at a time. How about luck?
Well, luck, there's a famous Yiddish saying, which is, it was on the menu of the delicatessen across the street from my father's fabric business, one-man business, where I worked for several years, and that is this: luck, that which only a competitor possesses. But luck, the luck I use as a quote in my book is, what did I say? Oh, no, luck essentially is putting out buckets so if it rains, you catch water.
Yeah. Isn't that also preparation?
Yeah, it's simple.
Now, the other thing you talk about is tenacity.
Well, that's for everything. Tenacity is, I think a lot of people at here, Motion Picture Center, have the tenacity to hang on to life. And part of that is exemplified by taking a walk every day, still watching their diet. Yeah, tenacity is, very few people hit a home run first time at bat. Staying power, you've experienced all the things I'm saying, you yourself, Hawk, have done, experienced, and lived through. That's why you're still here at the top of your game.
Thank you, Larry. Let's talk about now. You worked for your dad in the fabric business. How did you move to? I think was the first job at Kurt Fring's. Was that? Am I right?
Your job's critical because what's important is to get in the game. In fact, an old-timey director, top director, not that old-timey, John Badham, who's directed many great films, and for me and my then partner, David Foster, he directed Short Circuit, which was really a nice commercial success.
Right.
Because we made it a sequel, the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And Badham told me the following story. He was a graduate of Yale School of Drama. That's one of the top exalted schools in the country. And after graduation, he came out to Hollywood to get a job. He couldn't get a job as a director, and Yale was the preeminent school for that. And he said, he told me this, he was standing on the street opposite Universal Studios and looking at it, and he suddenly had an epiphany. He said, wait a minute, John Badham, would be better off doing anything inside that studio gate than standing here in the street. So he took a job in the mail room, just with an MFA from the top school in the country. And he took a job in the mail room, from which he became John Badham, a director of loads of good movies, I think including Saturday Night Fever and many others, and happy career, happy commercial, and critical success. What am I trying to illustrate by that?
Well, you were just talking about how you got started.
Oh, how I got started. Well, I couldn't get a job anywhere. They didn't have internships in those days. And I couldn't get started. So I was reading the Daily Variety every day to sort of know what's going on in the field and pretend I was sort of in it, which I was not. And in the Variety, I noticed an advertisement. I would say the advertisement was maybe 1/2 inch wide, a tiny, cheapest advertisement. I actually marvel at it because it's been so desirable and difficult to get a job in the mailroom in an agency today. It's like you have to know someone, or your parents have to be connected. But there they advertise. So I answered the ad, and given my name, I remember vividly how I answered it, because the ad said, experienced agent wanted, box 2. So I wrote a letter, dear box 2, I have no experience, but I'm full of energy and I will work cheaply. I can't believe I said that, but I did. So they called me for an interview, and on the spot offered me a job for $50 a week. Now, mind you, $50 a week was more then than it is today, but it was still dirt cheap slave labor. And I took that job and they hired me. And I'm smiling at this because the first day in the job, my boss It's a tiny agency. There were 2 other people besides the boss, Kurt Frings, in a tiny but very chic office. And they had very small group, but he represented Audrey Hepburn, which would get I used to get me in every door in Hollywood. I flogged that. At any rate, first day in the job, what a Hollywood story. He says, son, he looked at me, he says, I'm going to teach you a profession. And then he threw Daily Variety to me from his desk. He says, read this every day. That's the last teaching I ever got from him.
Ah,
But I was energetic and motivated, and I forced myself, which I had to do. I didn't have that buoyant, outgoing personality that is so demonstrated among people who were selling as agents or what have you. And I remember I had to psychologically take myself by the scruff of the neck and force myself to go into someone's office or make a phone call or knock on the door. And I learned very quickly, you don't die from it. And if you do enough of it, one of those people is going to say, yeah, okay, I'll meet with you. Or yeah, I'm interested in seeing your client for this acting job or whatever, or camera job. And I was always drawn. My boss was basically an actor's director, full oozing charm. And he had Audrey Hepburn, who was Queen of the Hill, and it got him in every door in Hollywood.
so Larry, let me ask you here. You say in the book, there's a fantasy that I probably had my whole life that you actually got to have. Is it true that you danced with Audrey?
Audrey Hepburn, yeah, my claim to fame. I made the grad. I produced The Graduate from nothing, a total production. I mean, it was a book that sold maybe 1,000 copies total. At any rate, yeah, my boss, Kurt Frings, and that's what agents still do, they entertained. He had a party, and he had me come. He invited me, his worker, and Audrey was there, and I had a dance with her, figuring that 50 years later, I could be on your show and brag that I danced with Audrey Hepburn.
Oh, man.
She was lovely in every way, but at the same time, I always, maybe it was me more than her, but I always felt I had an audience with the queen, so to speak. I didn't feel confident and equal. And the image of many agents is oozing confidence and coming on strong. I had to combat that shyness in me. And what I learned is if you practice not being shy, pretty soon you're actually not shy.
Good for that.
That was a real.
We keep talking about tenacity.
Well, that was a learn. Tenacity is critical, but I learned that in my dad's fabric business because there were 10, 12 other people selling the same kind of fabric, linings, the inside of a coat. So how do you set yourself apart from the other 9 people selling the same thing?
Right.
So either you have to be a half a penny a yard cheaper, or what I learned is if I called on 5 or 8 customers, I probably wouldn't make a sale. But if I called on 25 or 28, I always made 1 sale.
There you go.
That was good tenacity training for being a movie producer, because you get, as you yourself know, you get nothing but the rejection.
Well, so Larry, you talk about tenacity and being an agent. you got to be pretty good as an agent. And why don't you tell us the Joan Fontaine story? That's a pretty good story.
You actually read my book. I put that in my book. Okay. As a kid agent, I was given the agenting of Joan Fontaine, who had been a huge movie star and very successful. But I was given her as a client because by then she was on the downgrade. I mean, her best, most famous, successful years were behind her. So, but I liked her and believed in her, and I saw an opening role for her at MGM. And in those days, MGM was sort of king of the hill still. And so I tried to sell her as the lead female on this particular film. And I would see a man head of the business side of the studio. His name, you probably remember, Hawk, was Benny Thaw.
Oh, sure.
And I was the kid, but I'd call in, I would knock on his door, which you could do then, try to knock on some studio head's door today. It was a smaller world then. At any rate, I'd knock on his door and he'd say no. And then I knocked again 2 days later and he'd say, well, he said, it's only 9 o'clock. I said, what are you talking about? It's in the afternoon. He said, no, what I mean is to make this sale. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. It's, if I'm in a bar and I'm looking to meet some young, beautiful girl, I pick the best looking one there is at 9 o'clock. But if I'd strike out, by the time 11, 12 rolls around, I'll take whoever's left. So I saw him a week later and he'd say, yeah, it's only 10:15. But I kept persistence. That's
You kept trying to sell Joan Fontaine, right?
Yeah, to sell someone. She had probably won an Academy Award earlier in her career, if I remember correctly. At any rate, I kept seeing her. He said, it's not time. And then one day, about a month later, I was in his office. He said, it's midnight. I said, what do you mean? He says, let's make a deal for Joan Fontaine. And but I hung in there, and once I saw an opening, I stayed there. It's a cute story, but a true story, which again, I maybe wrote about this, about persistence. In fact, I heard some other producers say this, but it made sense to me. If you're a producer and you have a project you want to make into a film, that project is only dead if you stop working on it. You can, 10 years later, you say, damn it, I still believe in that story. Or darn it, now's the time. Or, oh, now there's a wonderful actor for it. I'll try and convince that person, a new element. So
you're absolutely right, Larry. I just pulled something out of the drawer from 10 years ago, and I believe in it, and I'm about to go out and try and sell it again.
Yeah, but the key thing is, you said you believed in it.
Yeah.
There are producers who go into the office of a studio executive or a director or a producer, if you can get in these days, very different world. But we used to actually go to the studio and knock on doors. You could do that, as you likely remember. But the point is, the project's only dead if you quit working on it.
Yeah.
If you have conviction, I'm sure you've even experienced that, Hawk.
Yeah. Well, so Larry, now you were doing a pretty good job as an agent. Did you always want to be a producer? Was the producer kind of the end all goal? And if that was the goal, how did you get that first job as a producer?
Interesting. If you're a real producer, you don't get a job. You figure out how to produce something. Getting a job could be a stepping stone, but the only producers who are hired for real money are physical producers called, and you were the best there was, called line producers. They put together the whole manufacturing apparatus. but the real producer, and you just demonstrated it by saying you pulled out a script you want to produce, is creates the project. He or herself may not write the book, but see something in a book or a story or a real life situation or a writer who seems to have a wonderful new talent and energy, and then utilizes that material to become a producer. I mean, I don't write, although I was very hands-on with writers, both being aware of the kind of movie I wanted to make and having an unconscious arrogance that I knew how to best tell that story or how to make that writer's story better or more interesting or indeed more saleable.
So how did you go from Kurt Frings
Yeah,
to,
okay.
to the first producing? What was the first thing you produced?
The first thing I produced was, I was an agent and doing very well, actually, and enjoying it at a secondary level. I didn't have the ability to meet Paul Newman and try to sign him as an agent. I was secondary. But I liked it and I worked hard at it and I made friendship, pals with with James Dean's agent, whose name I now forget at the moment, senior moment, I hate.
Bill Robinson?
What?
Bill Robinson? No?
No. Bill Robinson was my partner. This is before your time. At any rate, he was James Dean's, and we became pals, and he and I talked about going in business together and to form our own agency. I would have probably, had he said yes, I probably would have been happy having my own agency business with someone who I liked, respected, and already represented James Dean, who was already James Dean. I mean, already hot stuff. And we talked about a partnership, but he was working for a top agency, famous artist, Charlie Feldman, who you were on the tag end of his life. And he backed out. He didn't have the courage to start his own business, and he didn't need to. He was a big star satellite within this agency, so he turned me down. But as an agent, although my boss Frings only represented actors, I began gravitating to and signing to be their agent producers and writers, because that area interested me. So I guess deep down, I wanted to be a producer, even though I didn't know it. And one producer I signed, and who was a social friend, Stuart Millar, whose father was Bob Hope's press agent. And because of that connection, who you know is as important as what you know, evidently, prima facie. And he got a job as assistant to William Wyler, the famed 3 or 4 time Academy Award winning director. And I was his client. And as his agent, I got him a job producing a movie at United Artists called am I boring your audience maybe with this kind of detail?
No, I think it's great.
I'm concerned I am. At any rate, I got him a job as producer with the United Artists on a film that Dick Clark, the famed radio guy and
American Bandstand, right?
He was big time commercially on radio. So he was able to his name was so prominent, his viewership was so prominent, he got a job as producer. Shows you can get a job without even knowing how to produce, but it doesn't matter. So he got a job as producer, and to be a real producer, I got my client and friend, Stuart Millar on. because he had produced one film again through his father's PR connections. He had produced one early film for the then RKO. At any rate, after I got a job, Dick Clark, once I quit my job as agent and we moved to New York to make this movie, The Young Doctors, with Frederick March, famous Academy Award winning actor, but now secondary only, having been older and fallen from grace. Clark got scared, left, and we hired Ben Gazzara at the beginning of his career. But that's minor peripheral stuff. The point being, so I was a producer on the first movie, never having produced, but United Artists, the financier, only gave you the money. So I had to do everything a real producer does, meaning I got to hire a studio where to shoot it. We had to pick the locations, had to hire the actors, hire the crew. So I did, on my very first movie, I signed every check on the movie because that studio just gave you the money and said, make the movie, as opposed to the so-called majors of Paramount, 20th, Universal, all those. So I learned on my first movie how to make a movie. But what you can never learn and can't be taught is what you, the producer, bring to the equation, what you see and want the final film to say, to look like, to sound like, what story you want to tell. Are you making a comedy, a drama, or what? Suspense? So you have to, hopefully, if you're any good, you know the story you want to tell, how to make it both entertaining and clear. And then, of course, the number one job, get the money to make the darn movie. That's the object of the exercise. Then it's up to you. And just like Hawk has a lovely gray cardigan sweater on, and I quite like my own, which I bought, God help me, 30 years ago in Paris. A movie reflects the producer's taste. Hollywood has evolved where the directors are kings and the producers are only princes, except who make the huge, expensive rock and soccer movies that bring in $100 million instead of $10 million. And they become well-known, renowned, and powerful. Producing is a noble profession, but it's underappreciated. Every one of you on the opposite end of this photo of me watching this, thank you for tuning in. I'm pleased and impressed with anyone who did tune in. But what did I start to go with?
It's okay. I just want to say that I like this sweater also. And the fact is my wife knitted this sweater.
Wow.
So she's a woman of many talents.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
gorgeous. Not only is it beautiful, it's clearly a very ambitious knit.
Yes. Well, she's also a
I think I'm talking too much. How about I give you more succinct answers?
I'm very happy with this. So you went on to become a producer. You produced one of my favorite early movies for me, which was The Best Man. I thought that was great.
Very proud of that. Yeah, that is funny. Yeah, William Goldman, the esteemed screenwriter, I met him. You know, we were very close pals and had a strong correspondence. And in one of his letters to me, Bill Goldman wrote, "The best man got you me." By then he'd become famed, Bill Goldman, and I had solicited. Well, of course, I solicited him. Well, I had a New York theater producer friend who said his old world Jewish mother couldn't understand what a producer did, and most people don't, even though some of those watching probably right now. And he figured out, he told his mother this, "Mom, a producer is someone who knows a writer. And I think of that quote of his. He became a theater producer, hugely successful, Stuart Ostro. But
Well, you have a favorite story you tell in the book about what you say is your favorite story. It's when your mother asked you if you knew somebody. What's that story?
I'm laughing because it shows an old world Yiddish mother, and she was all about what's the word, fame, I guess. She asked me one time, is Joan Crawford having an affair, and I forget the name of the male actor, with so-and-so? And I said, Jesus, mother, how the heck would I know that? And she said to me, well, that's your business, isn't it?
You're in the movie business. How come you don't?
I chuckle at that even today.
Yeah.
Let me try more succinct answers for you.
You can be as succinct as you want, but I have to tell you, you worked with a director that I worked with, I think the Flim Flam Man with Irvin Kershner.
Oh, Irvin Kershner.
Crazy Irvin. I have a wonderful story, and you can give one too, but I'll give you one of mine. We were shooting out at the Statue of Liberty with Barbara Streisand on a movie called Up the Sandbox.
Oh yeah, Barbara directed that.
No, yeah, Irvin Kershner directed it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kersh directed it.
Old person's memory. Sorry.
That's all right. And Gordon Willis was the cinematographer.
So
and
good.
Barbara comes up to the Statue of Liberty in a speedboat, and we've got helicopters. We're going to do it exactly at magic hour. We've got 3 cameras. We're all pointing towards the Battery, right? The Battery of New York and the Statue of Liberty. And this is how much I love Kershner. Gordy Willis holds up 3 fingers, and that would say 5 minutes a finger as the sun's going down. So he said, we've got 15 minutes. So I was the first AD. We got everybody ready. We're just about to roll. And Kershner looks at me and Gordy and says, hey, what if we turn around and shoot the other way out of the harbor? We told Kersh to shut the you-know-what up.
I'd like to start over and give you short answers to your questions.
Larry, you're doing great. So now you do some of these, and then all of a sudden, as you started to say earlier, you somehow read a book that only maybe 1,000 other people read.
If that,
and you, for some reason, and rightfully so, liked it enough. So give us the anatomy of The Graduate.
Well, that's true. I was such an eager beaver producer. I tried to follow all the newly published books, all those newspaper articles, anything that I thought might be the basis of a story. And I read The Graduate, and I did something that no producer should do. I put up my own money to acquire the book. Because what I tell my students at the START program at USC is, and is sadly true, nobody wants a producer. Wrong. They'll want Hawk Koch because he can physically knows how to make a movie. Many producers do not physically know how to make a movie, and I myself probably fit in that category. I know how to assemble the group to make the movie, but I can't. To these old songs, I won't like the new songs because I had commissioned Paul Simon for the 2 of them for him. He did the writing essentially to write 3 new songs. I paid him X amount of dollars and the percentage, all that stuff. And Mike said, oh my God, Larry, we won't like the news. We'll be so used to these old ones. And I, again, too casual, my nature, too quick. I said, so we'll use the old songs, big deal. Well, that's of course what we did. And as they say, the rest is history.
Oh my God. But he did write an original. Mrs. Robinson was an original for the movie.
Mrs. Robinson was an old song Paul had written about Mrs. Roosevelt, I think, and he adapted it. He took it as a springboard and adapted it for The Graduate. And that became his. At that time of my life, long ago, of course, I was married, and the saleswoman at Saks Fifth Avenue was one I periodically saw when I would buy birthday or anniversary presents for my wife. Her name was Mrs. Robinson. I'm laughing. At one point, she turned to me and said, "You changed my life for the better."
Oh, what a great story. So tell me, tell me how you and David Foster got together. I've known David. I knew David. I think Foster Ingersoll was a public relations firm, and they represented Natalie Wood in 1965, and I did a movie with
Well,
him.
he was a top toppress and he kept soliciting me to be partners. Well, I'm not the best partner. I sort of like my own way. A tough admission, but not the best partner. So I always resisted it. And to share dirty laundry with your audience here, as you might imagine, I made many millions of dollars on The Graduate. I mean, many. I mean, I can't believe it. And I'm talking long ago when many millions was 3 times as many millions as today. And I was an unsophisticated naif about money matters and turned all that money over to a famous Hollywood business manager, someone who invested for and ran the phrase they used, ran the money for, oh my God, senior moment, and for Herb Alpert, okay? So he was a big time guy and I turned it all over to him. I don't know why I'm admitting this to the whole place here, but I am, why not? And although he was honorable, honest, certain laws changed. They were always looking for ways to avoid taxes. And I lost all the money. I'm talking about $5 million then. And I lost all that money and I had a terrible emotional reaction to it. I mean, I'd sit sort of comatose in a chair saying, what did I do? I had I'll tell you the true story. I got a check for $1 million. And that week I said, oh, there's a painting I want to buy that cost $20,000. And my accountants and business managers said, you can't afford it, you don't have the money. Now, I had just gotten a check for $1 million, but I couldn't spend 20,000. True story. And I was in a big emotional funk for probably almost a year. And during that time, David Foster again kept saying, oh, let me be your partner. And I said, sure. And he was a good partner because he was full of energy and enthusiasm and was very good at getting PR stuff for us in the papers or arranging a deal. He would hustle a studio to give us offices and secretaries and finance our movies. I was always had my nose to the content grindstone. Right. What's a good story and how can I make a good movie of it? And right. He was a very good partner, but we were so different that after a couple of years, we began to more or less work separately. So when a movie like a smallish movie like Mass Appeal, which I made with Jack Lemmon, I produced that while he produced a and both for our own company. So we both shared in each other's monies and
Right,
profits
but
and all
you did
that stuff.
separate movies.
Yeah, but we worked separately because I was so totally concentrated on the making of the movie, the script, and he was contrasted on, and he was great at it, getting a studio deal so we weren't paying our own rent
Right.
and certain kind of movies. He was really a good producer of a great rah-rah guy.
Now you decided at one point to direct a movie.
Yeah, well,
Doesn't
part
sound
of
like
it,
you liked it very much.
well, I liked it, but I wasn't good enough at it. And good enough is really counts for one main thing. I tend to choose stories, material that I identify with. And my taste is, I'll use the polite word for myself, can be quirky. And while quirkiness worked on The Graduate, it didn't work on the movie I directed. It's about and so I didn't have good commercial success with the movies on my own insignia, own banner.
Now I'm going to switch now to tell us all of a sudden for 25 years, because I've been a volunteer for you at USC as
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever you call it, several times. But
It's called the Peter Stark Producing Program.
Yeah, talk about how that came about. And
it came about because, as they say, I got a phone call over the transom. They had a new dean, Elizabeth Daly. She's now the longest running lived dean in USC's history. Amazing. And I was there. After her first year, she telephoned me to come down and run the START program. And I was still full bore in my career, successful enough to always pay the rent and keep making movies. And I said, who needs it? But I had a realization that when I was flavor of the year and hot stuff, I was offered the job of being head of production, deciding what pictures to make at 2 studios. Ted Ashley offered me Warner Brothers before he hired John Calley, a very smart move, by the way. And I forget one other studio. But I turned it down because I thought I had enough money. That's before they told me they lost it all. And I liked making individual movies for me rather than someone else's movie. So I turned it down.
so Elizabeth Daly called you.
I turned it down, but then I said, well, wait a minute. Maybe I ought to at least take a look at USC before saying no. So I went down there to look around at what the START program was. It was rather new in its existence. It had been there maybe, I don't know, eight years or so.
Had Ray and Fran, had they endowed the?
Yeah, Ray Stark gave $1 million, and a New York business friend whose name I forget, big money man on Wall Street, gave a second $1 million in honor of Ray. Because I
bet that was probably Herb Allen, I'll bet.
Who?
Herb Allen.
Excuse you. I'm trying to remember. I think it was the Allen firm. Of course, that family, right.
Yeah.
So I don't want to have lost track here, but so so I went down and said, you know what? When I took a look around, frankly, my ego took over. It's like, no, they should do it this way, not that way, or they're doing that the wrong way. It was really my ego said, I know how to run this. At any rate, I said yes to give it a try. And I was there for 29 years and I found I loved it. I designed the whole, I made it, well, the person who ran it before me, but who died halfway into his first year, was a marketing PR guy. And the guy who founded it, Art Murphy, was a writer for the Variety Hollywood Reporter. So I got a letter of congratulations from someone who said, what a novel idea, hiring a producer to run a producing program. And I took it very serious. I enjoyed it. I love picking the 25 students, which we took each year, out of 300. I love designing the program and hiring. What I chose to do as professors, they're all called adjuncts and get only $5,000 for the whole semester. So I had to romance people and use people I knew to convince them. But I ended up, because that was my philosophy, of hiring only people who were professionals working in the game. So teaching budgeting was someone who was doing budgeting on movies. And I had that for everything. Teaching writing, I had a top writer come in. So I made it a very trade school practical program, not airy-fairy, except I taught a class myself on movies, making movies, on taste. And if you had time, I'd tell you how I taught the class.
So have you changed over the last 25, 29 years? You were what you were teaching 25 years ago. Tell us how you've had to change because of the way movies are made today, or did you not have to change?
What a wonderful question. I don't think I have changed, because my teaching is about finding your own inner core. The SC and all, look, film schools at university is a growth industry. Every school has to have a film program these days, and many are good. Mine was the only one, I think. I never taught them how to manufacture film. They do make a short film in a team of 4, but essentially I teach them everything. I try to teach them everything they need to know up to the first day of shooting, meaning, where do you find material? How do you develop material? How do you balance commerce versus your personal taste and art? How do you cast a movie? Everything up to the first day of shooting. I love good directors. I love good shooters, but producers, as you yourself know, become so devalued. So I am teaching, I believe, certainly trying to, creative producing. Where do you find material? How do you develop material? What makes a good story?
Well, actually, at the Producers Guild, what you know, the producer's mark, and the reason why someone gets that little PGA mark, the biggest portion of that is, did they find the material? Did they develop the material?
Exactly.
That's the main part. The lesser parts are production, pre-production, and post. So always development is number one.
One can hire someone from the first day of shooting, or better yet, of course, 10 weeks of prep to organize things to get to the first day of shooting. But you can't hire someone to spot a piece of material. Of course, everyone does. They have so-called development executives. But the real producer decides what he or she wants to make in a film, and then from a standing start, makes it happen. So he or she has to be a generalist, creatively and business-wise, both. And I was always proud of that. And unfortunately, they're underappreciated. Everyone are, what's the polite word? They're all director fornicators. They all think the director makes the movie. And mind you, good directors enhance it immeasurably. And many of those are also capable producers. But the producer, I'm prejudiced, but I'm also being candid and I'm being honest. Real producers producing is an underappreciated profession. In fact, most movies only get made because the individual producer kept pushing and pushing and pushing and never gave up. A noble profession, underappreciated.
I agree with you 100%, Larry.
Yeah.
100%.
Sure.
So now you meet a young kid whose father was in the fabric business and he wants to get in the movie business today. What advice would you give that person?
Well, I phrased it this way. Try and get in through the front door. If you can't, go around to the back door. If that's locked, climb in through a window. If all the windows are shut tight, see if they have a fireplace. Go up the roof and slide in through the fireplace. And the one word example is tenacity, because that's what you need as a producer. There are producers or would-be producers who get 3 turndowns. Paramount, Fox, Universal, they don't like the movie. So the producer says, oh, it's not so good. Maybe I shouldn't work on it. The real producer says, wait a minute. I haven't tried Warner's, I haven't tried MGM. Yeah, they're small now, but they got money, they make movies. Wait a minute, I can crowdsource. Instead of my $4 million Hope For movie, I'll bet I can raise 90,000 and make this story in a smaller fashion. That's what a real producer does.
Great answer, Larry.
And you, Hawk, have made the biggest and smallest movie. You've made every size movie there is.
Yeah.
And indeed, you can do that. In fact, I used to call myself an equal opportunity employee. Whoever will have me in my project and give me enough money, I'll make it. And if I want $4 million, but they'll only give me 3, I'll make it for 3. And then if that falls out and I'm stuck with $1.6 million, I'll make it for $1.6 million, because I think a real producer begins with the enthusiastic passion to tell a particular story about a particular character. But that's me.
That's why I love talking to you, Larry. You hit it right on the head, buddy.
Well, it's a noble profession that's underappreciated. First day of classes, I tell my students, as a producer, you are going to have to nurture yourself. When I produced The Graduate, which, by the way, was as brilliant as Mike Nichols was, and I picked him before he was even Mike Nichols, that movie only exists because of me. I mean, it's braggadocio, but premised on truth and facts. But the point I'm getting at is, when I chose Mike Nichols, he wasn't Mike Nichols, but it took me 2 years to get the money, a year to make the movie. So when it came out, he was already Mike Nichols, King of the Hill. So the movie came out, and that day his agent, Robbie Lance in New York, telephoned me very excitedly, because I made him my agent too, for any necessary stuff. Although as producer, I did the whole thing. I mean, I solicited Joe Levine, I negotiated myself. But the point I'm making is, Nichols' agent called me and said, oh my God, he said, the picture opened and the New York Times gave it a rave review. And you know what? And they mentioned your name, Larry. They mentioned my name.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
to me, that encapsulates everything. The movie only existed, I'm being braggadocio in the one picture that serves my purpose in a sense. In a film particular really serves my purpose. He was so excited they mentioned my name. Obviously, Mike Nichols is as good as any director who ever lived, as smart, as capable, and he's as good even dealing with front office studio executives. He's a smooth charmer who's very tough when it comes to himself and smart. He's a kid, he's great. But that's the example. So producing is, Hawk and I have each had very long and good, and I would term them successful careers, but it is nonetheless an underappreciated professional activity, even though, and I'm not trying to take away from Bruckheimer and Ray Stark himself, but partially because producers controlled the business when it was founded in the 30s and 40s. They used to sit at a studio office and the studio said, today your studio, 20th Century Fox, bought the following best-selling book. Please register your interest if you'd like to produce it. That's what producing was like in the 30s.
Yeah.
Let us know you're getting a salary, you're getting several $1,000s a week sitting in a nice office with a secretary. And if you want to produce this, we just bought a register.
Wow.
But it evolved into is certain producers saying, oh, there's this book editor, a Simon & Schuster. I give that person $100 a week for them to tell me if there's a good book on the horizon that I could try and jump aboard and get a hold of to read.
Right.
Those are two extremes, both accurate and true.
So Larry, you write in the book, and I'll quote, by writing the book, you re-examined your life. What new things did you learn by writing that book? About yourself.
What did I learn?
Well, you said
I learned how hard it was, but that's self-aggrandizing because my books had a nice success. It sold 25,000 copies, is published in China and in Europe. So I've been lucky with it. What I learned is, I'm not sure I learned anything. I examined my, it allowed me to learn what I think. So the book, I mean, my ego is such, I wrote every word myself. I mean, in many people who have some acclaim in some other field hire a ghost to write it, and then they bury the ghost's name in very tiny type. My pal David Wolper, unbelievably great producer, but his book, his name was in this type, and the person who co-wrote it with it was down here in the corner in this size type. My ego is actually bigger than that ego. I had to write it myself. In an odd way, that's a larger ego. So I cursed my way through it, but I'm very proud of it because it represents me, everything I actually feel and say and believe in. And I repeat, I bitched my way through it. What I'm toying with, I'm trying to find my way here. I'm only here 5 weeks, and I'm trying to find my way at Motion Picture Center. And I thought maybe I could write another book, but I have no topic. And
well, maybe you'll come up with one at the home.
well,
So listen, Larry, I have a question.
I'm thinking of writing a personal book about my life, but not about movies necessarily.
Right.
The problem is at this advanced age, I'm still trying to figure out my life, whereas most people by now have. And
I don't think so. I think everybody's still searching. So Larry, there's a question from a man named Rocky on Facebook. If Larry's the TV movie you did in 1974, Unwed Father, with Kay Lenz and Joe Bottoms.
Yeah.
This guy loved that movie. Will it ever be released somewhere where he can see it again?
Well, you're asking the wrong guy because I don't own the movie, I don't control the movie, and I have no rights to that happening. And anyway, in today's world, even if I had all the muscle in the world, no one would release that. It's a small story. Today's movies either are huge in one way or another in terms of idea, but
Right.
Unwed Father was perhaps the first TV movie I made, if I recall, or certainly near the first. And I was excited to make it. I mean, again, that shows who I am as a producer, meaning I want to make stories that resonate with me emotionally. And I don't care if they prove to be a $20 million movie or $1.2 million TV movie. I want, I'm story oriented, meaning I'm emotion oriented.
Right.
I'm so, I also have an ego, so I'm very pleased and proud to get that question, but I'm also practical, and that ain't ever going to happen.
Well, I'm going to bring back Jen Clymer and Freda because I think Jen has a question that she likes to ask to everybody. Believe it or not, Larry, we're at the end of our time, so Jen gets to ask a couple of questions, and then we're going to have to try and do this again sometime.
Well, I've enjoyed it because it allows me to learn what I think.
Go ahead, Jen.
Larry, the way we like to wrap up these interviews is to ask what your favorite film is and what your favorite television show is.
I don't have a particular favorite. There's a lot of good movies. I mean, if I scroll through someone who shows old movies, I don't have one particular favorite. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
But Larry, if you were on a desert island and you could only bring one film that you could watch over and over again, I know the one I would bring. But what do you
tell me what you would bring?
I'd bring Casablanca.
Interesting. I showed Casablanca to my students recently, I mean, a year ago. I show it because it's such a perfect example of everything, whether it's a love story, whether it's a mystery, whether it has political and historical overtones, and you can't cast a movie better than that. Casting's critical. The wrong casting can kill the best story. Casablanca, I can even tell that opening scene, which tells you so much. I mean, it's terrific and perfectly cast. But I'm sorry to disappoint you. There's a lot of really good movies that I try to show one. I'm showing one I'm still teaching my final class at USC, and showing a movie tomorrow. I hope none of them are tuning into this, but
I don't know. They might be watching on Facebook, but tell us, what is the movie that you're showing tomorrow?
I'm wondering if I should bring this.
Right, let me ask the question in a different way then, because I know you might want to keep that a surprise for your students. Yeah. I'm a lover.
You know what? You're doing me a treat, allowing me to spout off and learn what I think. I will tell you, I'm showing 12 Angry Men. I show it. You're not. Three of you are nodding.
Yeah.
To me, it encapsulates it. Anybody can make a movie if he or she has the idea to make it and the feeling to make it. It's a perfect example of, I'll tell this to the students tomorrow, conflict makes stories go. And that is conflict after conflict. it also shows you can make a movie that's quite wonderful movie if you have a good story, meaning this takes place entirely in one room. And you don't need a ton of money if you can recognize a good story.
And boy, did he cast it well.
I was going to just to say the same
And
thing.
also, conflict makes most stories go.
Yeah.
The comic book hero has physical conflict. But here is conflict, and conflict makes us interesting. I think, and to me, it's a perfect example. It's 70 years old, that movie. It was a TV movie, and to me, it's so instructive that good, interesting, colorful, diverse characters, casting. I'm promulgating this movie. The casting is different, but individualistic. All good actors, and it takes place in one room. And this, to me, is a great movie.
Bob, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Larry, this has just been wonderful. You've had such an amazing and rich career, and
yeah, not amazing, but thanks.
No, really.
And he danced with Audrey Hepburn. Are you
He
kidding?
danced with Audrey Hepburn.
That's not a career. That's just a lucky hustle.
Larry, The Graduate is one of my favorite movies. Simon and Garfunkel, you know, one of the great songbooks of this century.
It's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, and you know, the serendipity of you using your temp music,
yeah,
for that. You know, I watched it maybe a year ago, and it brings tears to my eyes because the music and the story and the cinematography are so beautifully choreographed and supportive of each other. It's it's crazy that was how it happened.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'm old enough now to see there's lots of crazy things that do happen, and one has to be open to either accept them and enjoy them, or not be driven into the ground by them. I'm still trying to learn that one.
Yeah.
And have a little luck.
Yeah.
Little luck never hurts, right?
One other connection with MPTF, the person that did a lot of your pre-visualization for The Graduate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. He lives right next to me. He's a wonderful man, and was a wonderful man. And I actually knew him and hired him before The Graduate. I hired him on an early film I produced.
That Johnny Jensen?
The eldest son who sketches, I made him take my eldest son for a one-day apprenticeship at what he did.
We're referring to Harold Michelson.
Oh, Harold Michelson.
Harold was such a sweet man, and he's right 2 doors down from me.
Yeah, Lillian, his wife Lillian.
His widow was 2 doors down from me, but he was, well, maybe you saw, I did, of course, the short subject that was, the movie that was made about him.
Right.
And it caught him. Very few people are sweet. He was actually sweet.
Larry, I can't tell you, I had so much fun today. You are an absolute gem.
I don't like how the length of my answers, I got so caught up.
I thought
Larry,
they were great.
If you give me another shot, I'll be more succinct.
I thought it was great. And
it was fun for me. I learned what I think. So it was great fun for me, and especially with an old friend like you. I mean, Hawk, you and I worked together, I'm afraid it's at least 50 years ago, huh?
Yeah. Drowning Pool.
You were a kid and I wasn't so old.
You were a youngster also. And I just want to, so thank you, Larry. And I just want to give a little shout out for, it's going to be in March because there's a couple of weeks we'll be off, but we are going to have as my guest one of the great lawyers ever in the history of Hollywood.
I know, I heard you. I know Bert.
Bert
I
Fields.
went to UCLA with Bert Fields. He was cheerleader during the football games.
Aha.
And I knew him. He went to Harvard. It's interesting because I never thought of those terms. Yeah, no, he was always sharp, always good. He said, I've known Bert long and well, although it's been years since I've seen him now.
So he wasn't your, who was your lawyer, Larry? Who was your lawyer most of the time?
Yeah, Marvin, oh God. I was afraid you'd ask me questions.
Marvin Meyer?
Eric Weissman was my
Oh, Eric Weissman, great.
He was a Warner Brothers exec.
Right.
He was a kid lawyer when he was my lawyer. Oh, no, my first lawyer was Frank Mankiewicz, son of Herman.
Oh, wow.
My very first. And he quit to go to Washington to work and then ended up as Bobby
Kennedy.
guy.
Sure.
And I knew that whole family.
I remember him.
Yeah, I knew the whole Mankiewicz family.
Well,
I just want to, I want to tease for just a second. We will have Mirashan movies shortly. I know we're running a little bit over, but this has been so wonderful and we don't want to stop. Tell us when Bert is going to be on. And for those of us on Facebook, we want to make sure you mark your calendars.
March 9th.
I have a hearing loss. When what's going to be on?
Bert Fields is going to be on March 9th.
March 9th. Oh, good. That was my mother's birthday. I can remember. I'd like to see Bert. Yeah.
We'll make sure you can watch, Larry.
March 9th at 11 a.m. Pacific, not our normal 12:30. It'll be 11 a.m. Pacific time.
Oh, Bert will be good. He's a very sharp guy, as is obvious.
Thanks, everybody.
Fun
Thank
for
you
me.
again, Larry.
Thank you.